morning and welcome to Inside Tennessee along with John North. I am John Becker. We're your moderators this morning, and we are recapping and looking ahead at Knox County Schools. And with us this morning is the leader of Knox County Schools since 2022, Dr. John Rysewyk. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll get to the superintendent momentarily. First, our panel, that is Eddie Smith. He is a Republican, and he used to be a state lawmaker, but now leads Child Help. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be here this morning, John.
And
John.
Yes, the two Johns and three.
That's right. There we go.
We'll try to keep it straight.
You're outnumbered, Bosch. He is a Democrat and runs his own law firm. Good to have you,
And it's Don, so we could still get confused.
Yeah,
So
100% we could. Well, let's talk to you, Dr. Rysewyk. We'll say that to lead us off. What do you think was the most successful thing Knox County Schools accomplished this school year?
Wow, it's hard to put it into one thing. I think, we're now 3 years in, did a lot of big changes in year one, and really everything was about trying to be continuously improving so we get better outcomes for students. I think we're seeing that. We're now looking at 9% gains in literacy over the course of the last 3 years, 6% gains in math across the board over the last few years. Starting to track things about our students ready once they graduate, so we do that through what we call EPSOs, early post-secondary opportunities. We just came off 17 graduations in 8 days, got to see those kids come through and they're ready when they leave. And so we kind of looked at the numbers. So kids who have gotten industry certification, dual enrollment credits, those sorts of things, before they leave us, an average of 2.9 per high school graduate across the district this year. So all the things that we're saying to say, are they ready for life after they graduate, and all the systems that have been built over the last 3 years, I think we're finally seeing fruit of that shown in our kids' outcomes.
One thing that's happened in Knox County Schools is we've seen a decline a bit in the number of students in Knox County Schools. What is the reason for that, and do you know? It's
been interesting. We've talked a lot with the chamber about that. Two things that we're kind of seeing, it's not necessarily kids leaving. The two things that we're seeing right now, one is mostly, we see growth everywhere and buildings going up everywhere, but a lot of that is still 55 plus age people moving here for the quality of life and the tax breaks, those kinds of things that are there, lower tax. And the other thing we're seeing is a lower birth rate. So maybe families aren't as large as they were at one point, but to date, as far as finding a place where people are leaving to, we're not seeing that. We're just seeing fewer students. And probably over the last 3 to 5 years, it's been about 500 to 750 students.
And again, if you're wondering, Knox County Schools, almost 60,000 students. It's urban, rural, and suburban. That is unique as a district, and some 91 schools. John?
Talking about sort of planning for the future and maybe rearranging the furniture, if you will, two things of interest. First, the K-8 school, which is kind of a novel idea these days, it would seem, for especially an urban school district in the Western Heights area that would sort of replace 3 schools. How is that going timeline-wise? And then also, as I understand it, there are plans for something in South Knoxville. What's that?
Yeah, so John, great questions. So we've taken a different approach the last 3 years. Instead of just naming a school and building it in 5 years, we're trying to take a whole community approach to that. We did it at Farragut. That's another place we've done a recent groundbreaking. We go into that understanding those kinds of investments are like $50 million investments. We're probably going to only do that about once every 50 years. So when we go in, we're trying to look at a whole solution so that we're leaving that community in a better place instead of just building one thing. We did that in Farragut. Something we learned from that is looking at that it was one of the 2 feeder patterns that still had a primary and intermediate. Research shows now those transitions are not good for kids. So working with Farragut, we decided to build an elementary school, and then also to take away the intermediate and the primary, and now we'll have 3 pre-K 5 elementary schools that feed that middle and high. And so those are the kinds of things we want to look at to leave the community in better shape. The Western Heights one, the school that you're talking about, is an interesting situation that, again, 3 schools, smaller schools, more age schools, but have a lot of tradition in the city. We also had a lot of comments about middle school kids kind of being bussed out. No one's in that community, and we know the lifeblood of a community is a school. And so a lot of that, so how do we get these kids back here? Have some successful programs in those 3 schools, want to continue to replicate and keep those going. And K-8 just made sense. It made sense for that community to be able to bring everyone in, so let them stay from pre-K to 8th grade, capitalize on some of the program we see at Beaumont, see at Westview, and also at Maynard, and be able to build a school on a historic site in Rural High School, which is amazing. A lot of work with the county and with the mayor to try to get that done so that we can land it there. So we want to continue to look at innovative programming, and that will be part of that. The school's not set for 3 years to actually break ground. This fall we'll start with some more of that engagement with the community, but also just we want to push that envelope on innovative programming when we build that school. They have a fine arts program now. They have an honors program now. We want to make sure that those are programs that are not just Knox County standards, but they're actually an international or national standard as we move forward. So doing some site visits this summer to look at some other schools that do those things and hopefully bring some good ideas back.
And South Knoxville, what are you thinking there?
Yeah, South Knoxville is the same kind of situation. We have a growing population in South Knoxville. We have some smaller schools that are in that area, New Hopewell, Gap Creek, even South Knox is all in that area. And I think, as we engage, I think that was a 5-year out, as we engage that community, still looking what are the programming needs for that area. Obviously, there's some facility needs that need to take place too. So we don't want to get too far ahead because we don't know exactly what that will look like in 5 years. We want to continue to look at these trends and not lock ourselves in. So right now it's called a South Knox solution, but it'll obviously be something that probably impacts the elementary schools there.
So far, the Johns are dominating the conversation. Eddie, Don, we promised to get you in. We're going to take a quick break on Inside
All good.
Tennessee. We'll be back right after this. Back on Inside Tennessee, along with John North, John Becker, our discussion this morning with the superintendent of Knox County Schools about what's happening, what's coming. Eddie?
So, John, looking back, 865 Academies have been around. You all expanded those pretty significantly over the last couple of years. Let's look at and dig into some of the data. What are we seeing in attendance rates in schools that have gotten the 865 Academies? And what are you seeing in outcomes, and especially as it relates to the business community's involvement?
Yeah, that's a great question, Eddie. So 3 years ago, we launched this, and it really was a high school transformation. And some people kind of ask, well, high schools are already performing pretty well. Why would we do that? As we talk to business and we kind of move the goalpost. The goalpost for us was no longer just graduation, but before they left, could they demonstrate mastery that they could be successful after graduation? And we talk about our 3 E's with that: enroll, enlist, and employ. Like those, we want to make sure every kid has a plan to that. So 865 was just a way to make schools smaller, a large school feel smaller, put kids on a path with an assistant principal, with a counselor to get that done. And so all of our schools are there now. We have 8 of our schools who are in year 3 of that. And results that we're seeing increased graduation rates. We're seeing lower discipline. We're seeing lower failure rates reported across the board at almost every school. Attendance rates are improving as well because, again, you think about it, you've got, instead of a traditional hallway in math, science, English throughout the school and a kid navigating that, you have all those teachers room to room to room, and they know the kids. There's nowhere to hide, right? So you have someone who knows, understands the family situation. Those teams of teachers meet weekly, going through like their hot list of kids based on what they're seeing behavior-wise, what they know about maybe home life for that student, and they're pushing into that and making like written plans for every kid. So to be known and to be seen means a lot, especially when adults are surrounding you and doing that. So seeing that, it's been a huge thing for the business community. We have a CEO Champions Board. Initially, we made a lot of asks of them. Both mayors sit on that, and about 40 CEOs from all walks of all careers. And they're now guest speakers. They're taking our students in on visits to go to their sites. Places like UT Hospital, 2,400 of our sophomores went to go to their simulation labs and last year to be able to see that. Dr. Keith Gray's been incredible for that. He's on that board too. It's just interesting to see the shift. We actually had them come to CEO Champions at Christmas. They came and said, we started this journey to help you, but now we understand this is our future workforce. They actually took it on themselves at the January principal meeting, at the comeback meeting for all of the high schools, to go attend those staff meetings and ask if they could have time to speak for the value that meant for their companies and for their future. So real powerful when we don't have to do that, right? When they decide they want to do that, because they see the long term. We said before, it takes a community to raise the next generation and prepare them, and we're really seeing that from our business community right now.
So, John, let me pivot here just a little bit, just as Eddie did very well, I might add. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about what both on the federal level and at our state level in Nashville, what is sort of happening by way of their mandates for education and what they think you, as a superintendent of a major district, should be doing. We've seen an effort to eliminate DEI programs. We've seen an effort to eliminate the Department of Education on a federal level, and that's so important to the special ed programs and things of that nature. We've seen efforts, frankly, to whitewash history to avoid certain things. What real changes have you had to make, if any, within the school curriculums and your schools that you manage? Are you seeing a big difference today in what you're doing by way of curriculum and what you can offer versus maybe what you could do 2 years ago?
A great question, because I mean, it is very fluid on the national scale, and even
fluid is a kind way of putting it, John.
Sometimes day by day.
Yeah, it is sometimes, and so I would say on the curricular side, you know, Tennessee has taken a pretty conservative stance over the last 10 years. So we haven't seen a lot of curricular changes to us. So there weren't things in violation of federal rules or laws that came down, and so, you know, again, we teach our state standards, and we're in pretty good shape as far as that goes. As far as, you know, the future of the federal department, those sorts of things, I mean, I think, you know, your guess is probably as good as mine as how that ends out. I will say this, because we've been asked this question too. We're roughly $36 to $38 million when you take that we get in addition to our, you know, local and state funding that are things like IDEA, which are special education. There's a lot of titles in there too, from Title 1, 2, 3, and 4, that are for anything from teacher supports to setting off, you know, impoverished schools, additional dollars they get. We don't have a contingency plan for that.
And that's about 15% of your budget, if I did the math right?
Yeah, we're the budget we just passed was about $700 million.
So actually,
yeah, so
not quite that
it's not
much.
quite that, but it is still, you know, still for it's kind of earmarked for specific causes, right? And we don't have the dollars to, you take Title I schools, you know, that is they have a certain poverty rate. They do things like have teaching assistants. They'll have additional materials, professional development, things like that they can provide to offset some of their poverty. You know?
So to use a common phrase, if that money gets doged, there is no plan really to replace it or to continue those programs. You would have to, but there's no economic plan to do that. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we don't have $36 million, you know, that we're holding for a rainy day. You know, we're very tight and very transparent about how the dollars are spent. To commission, we produce annual reports on what that looks like, and you know, there's not that kind of money in there. So we obviously would have to go back to the drawing board. On the good side, I guess, is our guidance from the state right now is that, you know, we're moving forward, planning to use those dollars, and they feel confident we're going to have those. The kind of the main thing we've probably done this year is look for about a 5% kind of holdback, and let's kind of wait and see through the first semester so that we don't overspend. But, you know, kids are still getting all the services they need, and if, you know, by Christmas that's not there, we'll release those dollars too. But, you know, we're trying to be thoughtful about what we do to make sure that we don't put them in a hard place halfway through the school year.
You did hear from a report that special education is an area where Knox County Schools can improve. Explain to our viewers what was in that report and what needs to be done to improve that experience for students.
It's a great question too. You know, in the 3 years we've been here, this has kind of been our format. We're pretty good, but we don't accept pretty good. So we've hired external folks to come in and do kind of an analysis of where we are, analysis back against best practice. Special ed about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, was one that I called that we wanted to put together a task force that involved parents who had special education folks. I mean, again, we're thinking they're our customer, students are our customer, families are our customer, and we wanted to look at that. And so the report that came out last month was a pretty extensive one, and I think we found what I figured we would find. You know, there are some places, I think the words they used, you're a model district in some of your practices. I wasn't as interested in that. I mean, I have an expectation that we're a model district across the board, but there were some other places, and I would probably characterize those as it wasn't a lack of knowledge. I think sometimes getting that knowledge or those practices down to every classroom, to every IEP meeting, to every parent encounter, and just their understanding of how to navigate or advocate in that space.
The process can be confusing and protracted for parents.
It can, and so I think that's an area that we obviously need to make improvements in, and we saw that. I'm encouraged. We just made the hire of our new director for special education, Dr. Brad Carr. I think he's the man for this job. He has been a special education teacher in West Virginia, was an administrator in a district office, so he understands from that, and then has come back to us to be a principal for the last few years. And in our conversations with him, understands both what the law requires, but also understands the areas that we can improve and maybe get some quick wins from even some frustrations he's had at the principalship. And so I think that's great. We can always improve and get better at that. And we're gonna make mistakes in that process, but we're very willing to continue keeping everyone at the table. We have a committee, a special education committee made of parents that he'll interface with a lot too, to make sure that we're pulse checking that are these things really happening there. And I think that's our next big step to get that done.
We're going to take another quick break on Inside Tennessee. Back with more of our conversation with Dr. John Rysewyk, head of the Knox County School System. Dr. John Rysewyk is our guest this morning, the head of Knox County Schools, superintendent. And if you're wondering about tax dollars, we had that conversation moments ago, but more than 60 cents of every dollar of your tax dollars goes directly to Knox County Schools. Don?
So, probably something else we need to talk about because it's been in the news, the ongoing problems at West High School. And I know there's not a lot you can probably say because there are investigations going on. But if I recall correctly, there are at least 2 coaches that pretty well known that there's been some transgression that they've committed. And you have, I think, the head football coach has been placed on leave, and that's been sort of quiet. It strikes me that this looks a little bit systematic, and maybe it's just the West, but first question I have for you, is there a systematic problem at West High School, one of the flagship high schools in Knox County and within our school system? And broader, do we have sort of similar problems, systematic, that we're not hearing about at the other high schools within Knox County?
Both great questions. And let me say this first as a dad of two daughters. Appalled by those things, as I think most people are, and it's not acceptable, and that's not something that we expect, obviously, in Knox County Schools. Your questions about systematic. So we're in the middle of this investigation, cooperating with law enforcement, and I want to get to the bottom of this as fast as anybody.
Does there need to be a leadership change at West?
I'll say they've been very cooperative with everything that we've asked, and I think that that's where we are right now, trying to get to the bottom of the law enforcement piece. We have a piece of that too, because there are things that are our policy violations, and in the end I'll have decisions to make. I'm totally willing to make those when I have all the facts and be able to get that done. So, I think. Obviously, we don't want people. We do the trainings, our annual trainings. These are not the expectations. These are bad actors choosing not to follow what they've been trained to do. And as we've known of those accusations, we move forward with investigations and taking actions to protect kids as we've known that. So, I'm anxious to get this investigation wrapped up so that we can take the appropriate actions.
Do you think there's a timeline for that?
I always try to go in with an open mind, but want to get it done as fast as we can. And I think. I want to be fast, but I also want to be accurate. And we want to have due process for the people who need due process, and not make emotional decisions, but make factual decisions.
Right, but in terms of decisions you might need to make in terms of leadership changes at West or possibly other high schools where you might be seeing something that the media may not be hearing about yet, do you think that'll be done in time before we start the next school year?
Yeah, let me say this. I'm not aware of this. You mentioned your question on the onset of was this a West or is this kind of systemic through the district? At this time, we have no reason to think that that's going on at other schools. At this point, our investigation is, and this issue is in West High School, looking at these things. But we take it seriously. Our goal is to get there fast. We understand people want answers and they want to get there. I want them to, and we're going to make sure that we get that done because West High School's got a storied history. It's an excellent school. And we want to make sure that we can restore and get them moving forward as fast as we can.
Well, and I think what needs to also, I'm going to step out of the political side of things for a second into, my role at Child Help. What I think everybody has to understand when we ask the question, is it school, is we know that based on data out of Knox County that 90% of all kids know their abusers, 70% are family members. So this is more of a culture problem than it is just a school problem. And I will say that Knox County Schools, and we're actually working on an MOU with them right now to bring our evidence-based education curriculum to help kids know how to identify a safe adult, that will be rolling out this fall. But it won't cost Knox County Schools a single penny. This is all fully grant funded and something we've been working on the side for a couple of years. So they've been proactive. There's a lot going on, but I think we've got to let the investigations take its place and let them make that decision. But it is a larger thing that we need to talk about as a community, that this is actually happening a lot, and especially when we look at what's called familial trafficking in our community.
Tennessee, as you know, has been working to boost base teacher pay, and I believe next year, 2026, we have to get to $50K for starting teacher pay, which is nice to finally get there. My question to you is this, it's actually kind of multi-pronged. Are you going to get there next year? How much is it going to cost? And do you have an idea of how many people that will affect next year?
Great questions. So let me back up a little bit and say this. One of our 4 priorities is great educators in every classroom. We're kind of bucking the national average right now. Since 2022, we've made an $120 million investment in salaries and benefits for our employees. Last year, we did a salary study across 20 other districts to compare all of our jobs, from custodian to teacher to administrators, and build our salary scales out. Our board chose to invest $44 million to bring to market value. And this was surrounding counties, but also looking like Charlotte, Mecklenburg, places like that to get to that. That's a commitment that we've made. We've already made a commitment in this budget to 2028, do that study again, because the recommendation's every 3 to 5 years. I'll tell you that we're seeing benefits from it. We started the school year out this year with 8 vacancies. 8. We've had hundreds. This summer, we're typically between 450 and 480 vacancies. We were at 50 when the school year started. To go to the job market, the fair that we do, and talk to principals about their 1 to 2 openings and them being selective, that's how we make improvements for kids, having high quality teachers, high quality administrators in every building. And you can't do that if you don't pay. And that's something that we made a choice and made the budget cuts. We protected 2 things we do in every budget. Since I've been here, is we protect the classroom, we protect the ratios, the student ratios, the teacher ratios, and we fund what works. This year we got $21.2 new dollars from local and state level. 19.7 of those went back into teacher salaries and benefits. So we're committed to continue to do that, because that's our best strategy to get better outcomes for students.
We've got to leave the discussion here for now. Dr. Rysewyk, we appreciate it. If you wanted more from Dr. Rysewyk, you can catch him on a podcast.
There you go.
He launched that this year as well. We'll have him back to talk more about that and the guests that he's chosen for that. Again, we hope you stay with us on this Sunday morning. Dr. Rysewyk, always good to see you.
Great. Thanks for having me.
We'll be back right after this. We're going to shift quickly from schools to the city mayor's proposed sales tax increase. And Don, we talked a little bit about this last week, but if you were advising Mayor Kincannon, if City Council puts it on the budget so voters decide in November, what's the pitch that will get voters to say, yes, that's a good idea?
Certainly the city has put out some areas they say the tax is going to be used in, but really when I look at it, it feels more like a 30,000-foot view of what this money would go for. I think the mayor and the mayor's office needs to be very specific as to what is this money really going to do? What's the add value to the community? And as we were talking off air, it really need to pitch something in every district to get citywide buy-in. Right now, I think people are just seeing the words tax increase. They're really not sure what they're going to get. The push of the mayor to get this message out has not been strong enough, I think, for this to really go through. And this is a tough thing to sell these days, given this economy.
Eddie, your take.
And I think Don's correct. I think one of the things that's missing is a lot of specificity in there. It's got the overarching...
I didn't use that word because I struggle with it all the time.
But, you know, one of the things that I remember that we did when I was in the legislature on the Improve Act is we actually came up with and identified 972 roads and bridges and then wrote that into the code so that taxpayers knew what we were going to spend the money on. I think if there was that level of specificity in this, it might be a little bit easier to sell. The other thing that comes into play is trust of the voters. You know, we just had a city property tax increase. Now on the heels of that, there's a sales tax increase. Do the voters trust that the money's being spent wisely? And I think that's where it's going to come down to.
For the record, John, on the city's website, affordable housing, $10 million. Facilities maintenance, $5 million. Greenways and road paving, $12 million. Parks, $10 million. Sidewalks and traffic calming, $10 million. A total of $47 million. Don says get more specific. You've seen history of that.
Yeah, I think when you sort of give the district voters something to think about and maybe a carrot, if you will, they are more responsive to that. That does work. A very smart person told me that earlier this week, and I'm like, yeah, you know, you're right. That would be helpful in this case.
We'll continue this discussion and get to more politics as well next week here on Inside Tennessee. Always appreciate you watching. We're going to hear from city council members who will decide whether to put that tax on the ballot to voters in November. That discussion coming in the coming weeks. Thanks for watching. Have a great Sunday.